Back then, the heroine was called Sally, and she was accompanied by her brother Nino and her adoptive uncle Paige, a pig hybrid. So, the team has to ship a demo of a few levels to demonstrate their intent. This storyboard shows a gameplay sequence with Sally entering a warehouse that will later become the basis for the Neutrophilus factory. Sally has to maneuver around dangerous environments to get to the source of the infestation. She gets to a ladder covered in acidicous substance and spots strange tracks on the ground. Sally is still in touch with the rest of the gang, Paige and Nino, thanks to their remarkable headgear. Sally, what was that noise? Sally, my bad, guys. The acid has eaten away the metallic parts, be careful. Here the sequence switches to gameplay and we learn to play by climbing the ladder, following the tracks and jumping over a small gap. The second jump requires momentum before we get to sliding down a chain and spotting some more shrimp-like tracks. While the camera moves around, we get to meet some rats for the first time. They will remain in all versions of the game up until the final release. Short platforming section in which Sally needs to jump down from a crate to crate. Sally picks up some of the substance on the ground. These are fresh. 10 minutes max. Sally comes across carcass swarming with rats, a disgusting sight. More rats get to the carcass. One comes out of its mouth, another one through a nostril. Sally tries to get down unnoticed, but she's spotted and panic ensues. The rats are fleeing through a tunnel at the back of the room. Sally moves toward the tunnel to get her weapon out. The noise is getting louder. Rats are fleeing back towards Sally. We can hear the shrimp getting closer. As the creature gets closer, a crate falls down on a rat. We finally get a good look at the boss. Its 3D model and animations will be used in the final game for the Astacus erectus, a small and harmless animal to photograph. The team has to ship a demo of a few levels to demonstrate their intent. The storyboard shows a gameplay sequence with Sally entering a warehouse that will later become the basis for the Neutrophilus factory. Okay, so we read that already. The date for the presentation of the demo is set, February 2000. Here is the entrance of the warehouse, complete with tutorial jumps and chain going down into the abyss. Here's another room of this warehouse with the infamous shrimp tracks we saw on the storyboard, leaving them out in the boxes and crates. Another sequence has us fly through a dangerous canyon aboard an absolutely adorable-looking spaceship. Later in the demo, Sally learns the infestations were caused by a mysterious cult, ruled by quite creepy-looking priests. The adventure leads her to her lair, a dark and nightmarish location, where she needs to activate crystals to open imposing doors and progress further down. Sally then needs to cross a maze of tunnels with this music playing, leading to a conversion space inside a massive, conical-shaped room. In the rest of the files, we can find gigantic doors and their gigantic interrupters, a hanging crystal, and some more foreboding bits of architecture. Finally, the demo ends in a more exotic type of place, an alien planet where we can meet some of the peaceful inhabitants we just freed from the cult. But just in case this wasn't enough, the team also worked on a racetrack bordered by quaint houses. One we could probably drive through with the official insect truck. The date for the presentation of the demo is set, February 2000. Here's the entrance of the warehouse, complete with tutorial jumps and a chain going down to the abyss. After a successful presentation of the demo, the team gets the go-ahead to refine their concept. This starts with a nearly definitive look for the exterior of the factory. The building's striking silhouette remains in the final game. An evolution of the look for the factory's interior was something that looks a lot like the final elevator room. The military starts appearing in concept art and sketches, providing a more realistic antagonist to Sally and the player. Sally's actions become better defined as well, primarily via platforming, of course. Dealing with the rats and soldiers infesting the factory, or playing with electricity. Design documents from those days list many different elements Sally could interact with. Wind, ice, light, sound, goo. But electricity seems to excite the team the most, and ideas start coming together. Sally and the military man, her new companion, can become conductive, or insulated to solve puzzles. These videos are the first tests for the implementation of electrical special effects. The electric arcs are already nearly final. Now for the real thing. A few months later, the team moves into new buildings, the Villa, a large house on the southern side. The team needs to deliver a vertical slice, a section of the game in near final quality to validate the experience. The story gets a major upgrade with new storyboard and synopsis seemingly every day. The team wants to deliver a more mature and emotional experience. Companionship is at the center of both story and gameplay. At this stage, it's even planned for Sally to get 4 to 5 different sidekicks through her adventure. But for now, the focus is on the factory level, where Sally and Paige need to fix the elevator before getting split up. Sally stumbles upon a dark crystal torturing a poor soldier. Thanks to her new Dom's glove, Sally can free the poor military man, who's already called Double H. The Iris Network was called the Spoon back then. Later on, she witnesses her dear Uncle Paige being carried away by the military forces. She's powerless to do anything about it. Then Sally gets Paige's gear while he gets packed up. Finally, Sally notices a Nats Priest, the old name for the Doms, manipulating a soldier, who then throws a dark crystal at her and starts the boss fight. Luckily, Double H comes to the rescue. We can see through this entire section how close the scenario for the factory is being final already, even at this early stage. A few months later, the team moves to a new building, the Villa. Okay, we read that. The boss at the end of the factory is then called Boxman, and already has his nearly final design. Numerous other design documents for the time show us other elements are already nearly final too. The rats, the electropods, and the lipsticks, or the Cyclops robot. Other documents show enemies that will greatly evolve or won't be seen again, such as the leeches, the devourers, and later on the Macapedia omnivora, or the crawling cockroaches. Similarly, interactive gameplay elements like the hollow pillars, the electromagnet, or the lightning beams will not survive this phase of research and development. This is also when the iconic camera starts appearing. The team always had in mind to offer a less violent type of gameplay loop and progression than just combat. Back then you earned money by selling incriminating shots to magazines by framing the right elements. You could create combos and your revenues would skyrocket. You could even sell the photos of rare creatures to the collector, the weirdly named Yvonne Tous, event house being plunger in French. The boss at the end of the factory is then called Boxman, and is already nearly final design too. Numerous other design documents from the time show us that other elements are already nearly final too. A few months later, the team has made great progress in what is now called the Neutropolis Factory. The Neutropolis Factory. We get to the factory with a prototype of the hovercraft, and we are greeted by a message by a very early user interface from Robert to Spoon. Literally, Robert from Spoon. Rats are everywhere, but especially on piles of neutralies. The ancestor of K-Boops, Jade, can find crates of materia, then a magic energy she could use in combat to launch spells. To fix the elevator, Jade and Paige have to find a fuse in the generator room. They have to take down an XP-24 robot first, though. The puzzle with the giant fuses is already there, as well as rats, lots of rats, and the cow carcass, a relic from the first version of the warehouse. Jade and Paige get separated at the freight elevator, which leads Jade fending off a Cyclops before stumbling upon a dark crystal, and a soldier in pretty bad shape. Thanks to her new military glove, Jade can break down the crystal and free Double H, who doesn't have a face yet. He will keep his helmet on for now. At the beginning of 2001, we start to see a concept art for a new major environment, sewers and the slaughterhouse. From the very first drawings, we immediately get the feeling of a hostile place packed with giant saw blades, animal carcasses, and dark red walls. In the first iterations, giant worms would chase you and your hovercraft down the maze of traps you would cross over bones. But it was already planned that you would need to escape from the race course to be able to get there. The competition was much less colorful back then. The sewer required you to perform a few jumps to get from room to room, something that will be removed in subsequent versions. And the giant portal puzzle was already quite the head-scratcher even back in the day. Now, though, it's time to get into the belly of the beast. Fending off the numerous XB-24 and Cyclops will not be an easy task. But it's worth it to capture the horrors of the human trafficking happening here. Before having to escape the police robot that chases us back even through the sewers. That's not all the team is making progress on. The adventure now begins in Paige's workshop called Home, and the hangar starts taking shape. From there, we can get to the hovercraft and visit Hillis to get to a very early version of Black Isle, where we can fight an early version of the Cherylomax. This level was added late in the process as a way to spend more time and connect deeper with Paige. Finally, the team has not forgotten its objective to give players a sense of discovery and exploration. Early prototypes of the Beluga allow players to fly across Hillis, but also in space, where we get to meet a familiar, creepy type of creature. Having moved from a small apartment to a nearby villa that year before, the Ubisoft Montpellier studio narrowly avoided a disaster. In October 2001, torrential rains poured down on Montpellier and completely flooded the studio's ground floor. Luckily, all the equipment is evacuated upstairs, and no lasting damage was done. In December 2001, the team finally reaches the vertical slice stage and captures gameplay sequences to showcase it internally. This footage without sound features a walkthrough of the vertical slice, beginning at Home, Paige's workshop. Here we see a cutscene in which Paige links up Jade's camera to an early version of her SAC. It will end up being cut later as the introduction of the game will be reworked. It is interesting to note that some elements, like this cutscene, will change very little until the final game is shipped. The hovercraft also gets a brand new look since July. The second part of the vertical slice takes place on Black Isle, where we first encounter a pack of Palinurus. Perfect opportunity to showcase some hand-to-hand combat. No Daijo in sight at this stage of development. The Palinurus also breathes a dangerous poisonous gas for which some oxy pills were planned at some point. Graphically, the team has made a lot of progress on the Black Isle environment, especially since that location was added quite late in production. Paige's super action already exists. The jet boots might not produce their super puff of smoke yet, but they are still already effective. The mighty Sherrilamax was already pretty scary back then. Don't forget to help Paige when he's being electrocuted by the jellyfish. We now get to the factory where that darn elevator appears to be fixed for once. A toutes les patrouilles. Intrus locus. Decontamination. Complice. Oh, I see. So this was a cutscene. The kidnapping of Uncle Paige was already soul-crushing even back then. Thanks to the gameplay recorder for the vertical slice, the team is able to edit a short internal hype trailer. Originally set to a 1999 electronic music classic, we unfortunately could not feature the original music here for licensing reasons. But we can still admire the progress that was made on all the different levels and gameplay mechanics. On top of the previous footage, we can see here early prototypes of the open world combat against the flying snake, and even dogfighting in orbit. In any case, the game is nearly ready to be publicly announced. March 2002. It is early 2002, and while the team is not as tired as our friend Double H, a big decision. On Black Isle, a new cutscene provides Paige with his favorite Barranco D53. And it becomes apparent that our favorite uncle has taken up smoking as a New Year's resolution. The broken elevator of the factory gets a new introductory cutscene too. In which Jade still does not have all of her facial expressions yet. We get to see the Dark Crystal in video for the first time here. The music playing here is from the same Shem frame, called Stress. It will not feature in the final game. This is a gameplay sequence that ended up being cut in the slaughterhouse. Finally, the first interactions with the terrible Krokraks have been added, much to the misfortune of our companions. Nearly there. April, only a few more weeks to go. The work on cutscenes is ongoing, like here on Black Isle. And we even get versions with temporary music and voices. Don't mind that bugged Max dying here.
Pas mal pour une jeunette et un vieux bout de lard.
On a réussi, Paige. Waouh, quelle équipe.
Il sait quand même bien payer notre pomme, ce monsieur de Casteltruc.
Let's say hello to the very first look of Han. Sorry, we meant to say Mird, Castelac's driver.
J'ai deux mots à dire, mais attends pas trop.
Mademoiselle Sally, je crois que je vous dois quelques explications. Ça ira pas plus loin par là. Un faucheur. Ils ont lâché un faucheur.
The factory's walkthrough evolves as well, now featuring the feared Reaper.
Sally, ça devient trop dangereux. Pense aux gosses, ils ont besoin de nous. Laissez tomber.
C'est de leurs parents qu'ils ont besoin, Paige. Et on a peut-être une chance de les trouver.
Un faucheur.
And Double H finally gets his face.
Ça va aller? Vous êtes notre contact. C'est vous, WH. Le Spoon. Ça vous dit quelque chose?
Écoutez, mademoiselle Le Spoon.
Sally. Je m'appelle Sally. Et je ne sais pas du tout comment on va pouvoir sortir d'ici.
De ce côté-là, je pense pouvoir vous être utile.
Alors c'est bien vous, WH?
WH, triple Z. C'est vous qui voyez, je peux pas vous dire. Moi, je vois plus qu'une seule chose. 10 minutes de plus et j'y passais pour de bon. Je vous dois la vie. Désormais, vous pouvez compter sur moi, mademoiselle Le Spoon.
Sally. Je m'appelle Sally.
À votre service, mademoiselle Sally Le Spoon.
The music we hear now is called Hillis Ballad, but it will not feature in the final game. The month of April is rich in new updates to the game. Here we explore more of Hillis with the hovercraft and environments we will not see in the future. The exterior of the lighthouse takes shape as well, including its small inhabitants. The prototype versions of the orphans did not include animal hybrids yet. Here is a look at some of the concept that we were done for the orphans and the different kids we could encounter during the game. The lighthouse also gets its first interior as well. We can see that Rayman's training was all the rage on TV back then. We see here the first version of Mingzu's shop with our favorite walrus hybrid already behind the counter, while the epic chase sequence leading us to the slaughterhouse takes shape, and the first aircraft flying machines start populating the skies of Hillis, a very important element to make the world feel alive. The Beluga allows us to discover more of Hillis from above, with early versions of the volcano, the city, and also a satellite in orbit. The user interface also gets touched up with the introduction of the iconic handmade font and the famous circular menu that will set the game apart from its peers. Finally, we have a screenshot of a mysterious room, an art gallery. The giant statue that Jade climbs is one of its pieces, and the collector Ivan Tuze seems to be managing the place. Battle stations, everyone. It's mid-April, and the team needs to produce the communication assets in less than a month for E3. First, with the key art here, its different iterations. Then a gigantic 22-meter long, 6-meter high banner to decorate the project's area of the Ubisoft booth. Early May, several different tests are done on render of Jade to complete the game's press kit. The project gets its first temporary name and logo. Back then, BG and E stood for between good and evil, not the beyond we have today. Finally, a selection of beautiful screenshots allows us to appreciate how far the game has come until then, and there is still a lot more to come. Okay, we got a video here.
Loyal Hillians. War
The video
has
font
reared its
The team
ugly
has
head.
produced the first version of General Keck's
With help
speech
from those
to feature in the
traitors
demo,
from
complete with
Swoop,
marching
the
alpha
enemy
sections
DOMs
and
have
peculiar-looking
broken through our
DOMs.
protective borders and infiltrated your city. Each and every day, they stab you in the back. A friend, a brother, a son. Enough is enough. Unite our forces. Join the Alpha sections, and together we will overcome. Join the Alpha sections, and you will know the taste of victory. Go to our proud soldiers of the Hillian army. They will guide you to us. They will guide you to glory.
On May 16, 2002, Ubisoft sends out a press release to officially announce Project BG&E alongside a few screenshots and the promise of a world with no bounds. From May 22 to May 26, a few members of the team go to Los Angeles to attend E3 and present the game to journalists from all over the world. On the massive Ubisoft booth, Project BG&E has a hard time keeping up with the company's other monster franchises. Press coverage is thin but positive. Journalists seem to really like the demo featuring a part of Black Isle and free exploration of Hillis and the hovercraft of Beluga. The trailer will release on the internet a few days later on May 28th. With it, a new promise is made. The game is announced to release in early 2003. On May 16, 2002, Ubisoft sends out a press release to officially announce Project BG&E. As far as video preparations, the first iterations for the E3 trailer happened in early April, but the final result will look quite different. We can spot some very early prototypes of the epic chase sequence on the rooftops of the city. While some journalists have been invited to Paris in mid-April to experience a demo on a boat, it's on May 2nd that Ubisoft reveals Beyond Good and Evil and invites everyone to learn more at E3. The team goes back to Los Angeles, this time from May 12th to 16th, as the first demos happen a few days before the grand event. The new demo allows journalists to play the first few levels of the game, with their critical feedback being very positive. While some journalists had been invited to Paris in mid-April to experience a demo on a boat, it's on May 2nd that Ubisoft reveals Beyond Good and Evil and invites everyone to learn more at E3. Launch. 6 months to go until release. The clock is ticking. Polish and debug are the priority at this stage, as well as the translation, casting, and recording of the localized voices. It is also time for the audio mix of the game to ensure the experience remains coherent throughout the entire playthrough. The menus and UI also get their final look, a running joke between the artists and the programmers who had to implement the changes. Performance optimization progresses, with the team having to comb through the entire set of textures in the game to remove the unused ones. Short on time, the team decides to showcase the game's final sequences through photos in the credits rather than full-fledged cutscenes. Not all of them make the cut. It is also time to prepare the communication assets for the game's release. The iconic camera shutter and game logo get finalized between May and June. Numerous tests and captures from the game were done between July and August to create the final game cover, step by step. Expose the conspiracy, capture the truth. As a rebellious action reporter Jade, you must penetrate your leader's web of lies and expose their darker secrets. The American version of the cover will go through a few iterations as well. Magazine covers, kakemonos, posters, wallpapers. Dozens of assets are created over the course of a few weeks, all from in-game elements. All of these assets will be shared with different partners, retailers, journalists, and of course the community of fans. Here we can see how many pages made for printed advertising were created, from mishmash game captures stuck together, to create a cohesive piece and its various iterations and formats. Each of these can amount to several weeks of work for a small team. Different territories use and create different assets too. And here again, we can see printed advertisements created specifically for the USA. At the same time, thousands of game captures are made to select the feature screenshots that will be shared around the launch project. But the work will not stop with the release of the game. At the end of November, Jackie's exterior shows off his skills to the camera to help create the game's final posters. In order to provide video content for launch, the team updated the E3 trailer with new shots, but they kept the old logo in the end.
The war has arrived at the gates of Ilus. General Jack, Supreme Commander. Join the Alpha sections, and together we will overcome.
Wow. After E3, the team meets journalists again in August for a preview event so they could discover more of the game, and a demo is released to the public in October. If the launch of the game was not as successful as commercially as the team had hoped, it still garnered critical acclaim across the industry and has achieved cult status over the years. A great community of passionate fans have come together around the game and its universe, one that remains strongly bonded even to this day. So, needless to say, a lot went into this development. And I had no idea about this game. I mean, this is 2003. What was I playing at the time? Probably Paper Mario, Smash Brothers Melee. Like I was playing a lot of popular games, and this was unheard of to me. I mean, I had a PS2, but I didn't really play it that much. And, I didn't really know what kind of game this was from the cover. I just assumed it was like, I don't know, like another shooter or something. So imagine my surprise when I found it was from the same developer as Rayman. And yeah, this game has larger history than I expected it to. It's Beyond Good and Evil, remastered. Took them 20 years.